Welcome inside to Storming the Field. It's week 16. It's a huge week. We're talking about fantasy football. Already people here at work, Ian, have been hitting me up. Hey, which person do I start? Which one do I sit? I said, chill. Wait till the podcast comes out. We got a hot release. Of course, on the mic coming in loud. I'm Steve Bender.
And I'm Ian Oliver. Yeah, we're going to get to the full week 16 slate. It's a big one. Made it to the semifinals.
Nice. Congrats.
We'll talk about it. Okay. I actually got put in the dirt by Jamar Chase in my other league. I'm in two leagues.
Well, dude, I saw your team loaded in this league.
Hanging in there at one. Yeah, I wish I had that lineup in both leagues. But first, we do want to bring in a special guest to run these plays with us. He knows a lot about the global game. In fact, he is the only person to have played regular seasons in the CFL, the NFL, and NFL Europe.
Look, he ain't just playing in these leagues, though. He's at the top of these leagues. I mean, when you look at it, he's the only player to ever compete in the Super Bowl, the Grey Cup, and the World Bowl Championship. Let's bring in Yo Murphy. Yo Murphy, thank you for being with us here on Storming the Field.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it, fellas.
Man, looking, at your background and all the spots that you've been going to. I mean, you started out with the BC Lions, right? Back in 1993, the Grey Cup, then the Scottish Claymores, then you got into the NFL. I mean, just incredible where you've been able to travel. Of course, we are a weather podcast, so I got to ask you, have you had any dynamic games where you thought about the weather? Was it out in Scotland or was it in Canada? Is there any games that stand out in your mind that you're like, never again, I don't want to battle with that?
And, in Canada, I think every week I said that. They just, and Scotland, we fortunately, when we got there, it was just raining and it wasn't quite as cold. So we're kind of getting at the back end of it. So we had a few games that were, blustery, a little bit of rain. Started getting better towards the end, but Canada, you'd work the other way. So, all the teams I was on, fortunately, we made it to the playoffs, had opportunity to play in the Grey Cups, but you're playing outdoors in November in Canada. So, I remember a game I'll never forget. My rookie year, we were playing Calgary, and I had a really good playoffs. The guy got hurt. They threw me in. Leading up to it, had some good games. So my coach, was telling me, look, we need a lot out of you tonight. It was a Western Conference Championship. See who goes the Grey Cup. And I walk out there in Calgary, November, let's say November anything. It was probably November 15th, right in there.
Yeah.
And I had everything on in my locker. So, thermal underwear, sweatsuit, all this stuff for warm-ups. My coach walked up to me and he's like, we need you tonight. And then he looks at me and grabs my arm. He's like, what do you have on? I said, Coach, I have everything
Snowsuit.
on. Right. And he goes, go in there, take everything off. I don't even want you in sleeves. Yeah, and I'm just staring at him like, I don't know if I can do this.
We're just kind of diving into some of the first games that we saw on the slate. You got the Chiefs and the Texans, Steelers, Baltimore. For us, we look at ROE, which is the risk of weather impact. They remain low. So we're kind of diving into some of those games that we see late in the season. But I want to ask you, because you're a receiver, right? And so, you played in Scotland where you said it was raining, and then you played in Canada where the ball feels like it's a rock half the time. How is that translating when we're looking at fantasy lineups now? We're looking at those receivers. Again, this is difficult this time of year when you're talking about just the cold itself can be oppressive.
Yeah, for sure. I think, the cold is there's so many factors with the cold, but as far as being a receiver, catching the ball, a wet ball is the hardest thing to do. And then it's about the ball is going to be heavier. So it hits a little bit harder. The cold weather, it just stings, once you get, once your fingers are numb, it's, you're good. But when the ball's wet, you just really can't be lackadaisical. You have to follow it all the way in with your eyes.
We're jumping into these games talking about the risk of weather impact, and even if there is a low impact, doesn't mean it's a non-event. It is now with this level of fantasy concern. You got to look at everything, because it's not just if you're going to make it to the semifinals. You also don't want to be the grand loser. I don't know what your penalty is in your league, but sometimes those go viral. It's a punishment.
Yeah.
So,
we get the Detroit and Chicago game. That one's going to be cold. They're coming off a situation where they lose David Montgomery, which is a huge bummer. They had that really cool Sonic and Knuckles dynamic going.
Yeah.
And Jahmyr Gibbs had posted on Instagram the picture of Sonic holding Knuckles. So I mean, that was really cool to see, and I feel like, I mean, I'm a Pats fan. I didn't want to bring that up because I know Yo was on the greatest show on turf roster, and I don't want to rock the boat too much with that.
Well, for not wanting to bring it up, you did.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, let's not bring it up. Except let's discuss this for at least 5 or 10 minutes.
There you go.
Working through the turf here. I mean, you're coming from Ford Field over to Soldier Field.
Yeah.
And it's a banged up roster. You've got their defense who has lost a bunch of bodies. All the while, I mean, this is probably the best team in the NFC, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And where I was going with that, that's my bad. I lost my train of thought. I feel like as a Pats fan, that's kind of America's team, Detroit, right now, because of Dan Campbell, how easy it is to root for that team, and the fact that they haven't won. But the injury bug comes for everybody, and it has really taken a toll on them.
Yeah, I feel like it's difficult with Detroit because, as what you mentioned, Montgomery going down. Now you're thinking about Craig Reynolds. That was like a big pickup on fantasy potentially, just because Detroit's going to do what Detroit's going to do, right? So they're going to still run. They're like the third run heaviest team in the league, and so you're going to have Jahmyr kind of, give some of the love back over to Reynolds. So that could be a pickup for some of these leagues. Maybe even if you're not in the playoff race, but if you don't want to be last place, that could be the saving grace if you pick up somebody like Craig Reynolds. Why that game's important. We look at Cleveland and Cincinnati. I'm so bummed. My guy of the year, the comeback player of the year, Chubb, breaks his foot. You hate that. He's gone through so much adversity. So now that kind of limits them. You're looking at the Bengals coming into town. That's another game. I think what's going to be interesting is this other game we have in New York. I'm going to circle it right here. And just kind of get, your kind of insight on this. We got the Rams going to the Jets. Jets have been eliminated, but when you're talking about MetLife, it's 26 degrees. That's just air temperature. But when you're looking at the wind picking up, wind chill could easily dip into the teens or even into the single digits. You have a Southern California team coming into town. How much do you think that plays into an advantage for the Jets team, even though necessarily they're not fighting for much?
I think you guys, it's crazy. Say what the rating is, the R.
The risk of weather impact. Yeah.
We still have that in the low category because it's not quite to the threshold where it's cold enough that we think it would have a more significant impact.
But I feel like that's it. And what I was going to say, that's really a factor in all these games. Even when you get a team that's a dome team and you get out and there's just some blustery winds, so I feel a guy like Aaron Rodgers, even though he hasn't had the best year, that's his thing. I mean, from the time he in the NFL, from Green Bay to the Jets, Stafford was in Detroit, but he's in a dome, even though the division might get a little cold. And then all the players, it's not even about getting and, practicing every day. It's about you change your lifestyle when you live in a cold weather city, So every day these guys are getting up early in the morning, going in for meetings, if they're not, their truck's not in the car or in the garage because, the mama's is or the wife's is, and they're, shoveling off their windshields, so it's just, I feel it's a part of exposure. And so when, teams come up to that and they're not used to that, it definitely affects it,
Yeah, you got to acclimate, right?
Yeah.
When you live in it, you don't have to acclimate. Right? It just becomes the new normal. Yeah, I felt that moving up, both of us, from Florida up into New York, right? I'm still trying to acclimate. I'm like, when does summer happen? I feel like it's just cold so often here.
Yeah, and you're doing weather forecasts. You're not getting hit.
Yeah, right? I know. It changes it up. So it's a good point, right? There is that advantage, regardless of truly if the weather is going to be active or not. Just the temperature itself plays such a big factor
we
this
do have,
next game.
3 games, though, that are actually up into the medium category.
Yeah, some could even budge up higher. Yeah,
two of them are in the second slate of games come Sunday. Vikings and the Seahawks. It has been relentless up there. In fact, that's probably our only comp toward what we were talking about with Scotland, Seattle. With those temperatures, and then New England and Buffalo. That's also in the medium rowy. 16 for a kickoff temperature with wind chill values, feels like temperatures that could dip sub-zero.
It's what's interesting about that. Those are two northern teams, but just in general, that cold is going to get you. That's going to limit. It slows things down, right? It doesn't matter how hardened you are. It slows things down. What's interesting about the Vikings and Seattle, both teams got a lot to play for. Vikings are trying to catch Detroit because here's the thing. It changes so much of the dynamics. When you're thinking if Detroit gets the home field advantage, they spent almost 80 to 90% of their year playing in a dome. Right. If you can steal that away from them and just get at least a home field advantage for you and the Vikings, I know there's another dome, but at least you get it for you and not for them. That game's interesting because we're watching this onshore flow again, moving over the Puget Sound, and that rain's only going to increase. So that's the type of game where you want to get on the gas pedal. I think that's even where you start changing whether or not you receive at the start of the game or at half,
Based on the radar and what's moving in?
Just because at the beginning of the game, it doesn't look like it's going to be raining yet. And so maybe you want to get that ball early, set that lead. Because normally people want to get the ball in the second half. That way you control your destiny.
Yeah.
This one, because of just the timing of this.
Yeah, there was some chatter of bumping that up to the high. There was, back in the Fox Forecast Center, they were talking about that. This is the one for me. We showed on the show yesterday, we got to go all the way to Monday, but we showed a camera of Lambeau Field, and the visibility was just about nothing as that hybrid clipper rolled right overhead. Saints come marching in Monday night, take on the Packers, snow showers in the forecast. You said the worst weather to play in, was rain. What's a snow shower like? A blustery, like a wind-driven snow up at Lambeau?
Yeah, I think, once you get wind involved with anything, especially rain, but snow too is got to be 1A after, rain and wind. And, one, visibility. Two, it's just, when you're a receiver and you're trying to catch a ball and you got arms flying in front of it, you got someone draped on you, and the ball may be moving a little bit because of the wind, and then you add something else in the air to mess with your vision, it makes things real hard. We have a few guys that we work with now, Edgerrin Cooper, Christian Watson, that play for the Packers. And it's always a conversation with those guys in the off season, like, being prepared from whether it's your cleats, whether it's, your mindset of catching the ball, whether it's, understanding what they're going to do to attack you in when the weather is like this. You just gotta always be prepared for it.
Is there any way to simulate that, or does that just come with experience?
Yeah, it comes with experience, mindset. We do a lot of distraction drills for the receivers. As far as catching the ball, a lot of eye training. And for the big boys running around tackling in that, there's just, the only way to get better at it is to be in it.
Yeah, we've talked with a lot of guys over the last several weeks, and even if it's a dome game, the coach forces them outside just to get that exposure, right? To just get those reps in. And speaking of a dome game or a dome aspect, New Orleans is a dome team. We don't often think of that. They're down south. They're going to Lambeau. They're going to be exposed to the elements. That is a major advantage. I wanted to ask you, because when we look at your background, we started off with the top. I've always loved how the NFL has been growing the game, right? And you've played the game in so many different areas of the world. What have you thought with the NFL expanding and we're going to different areas? Germany, Brazil this year, out towards London. And is there a spot that you think we should visit next?
I think, like you said, that the education and the footprint, of the NFL is just so crazy in these other countries. I still to this day, there's a few groups that have tried to get me out. I've been trying to get back to Scotland and been doing things with them on some football clinics. It's incredible. When I was first in Scotland the first year, they didn't cheer for anything unless you kicked the ball. So it was a punt and kickoff, extra point. We get a bigger cheer than a touchdown. I ended up playing there 3 years. My third year, it was totally different. And so I don't know necessarily where it should go next, but I know that, they definitely know, because it seems like it's mapped out all over the world.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised by that, by how much the game has grown globally?
I would say that if I hadn't played in Europe, because our game we played against Frankfurt one year, and when I say I don't know the stadium, it was probably about 50,000. They had 50,000 people standing the whole game, chanting, throwing stuff, toilet paper, whatever they could find, they're throwing. And the excitement there. And then Scotland, my first year, if us three would have been in the stadium, we would have doubled it. But by the time I got to year 3, it was every game we had, 20,000 people in there. So I'm not surprised by how, the football is. To me, the way that we look at it as Americans, it's the same. I played in Barcelona, Spain, and we were right next to where the old gladiators used to fight.
That's amazing.
And I feel that's that same feel you get from football. When you watch games, as a fan, like that intensity, that aggression, the intent, the power, the strength, all that stuff is infectious. So I can see it growing, as far as they want to take it.
Yeah, it's just the best of the best.
Yeah.
The heavyweights going and just going at each other for a full 60 minutes, if not more. Amazing. Since you played in different leagues, was there an adjustment to that? When you were playing in Scotland or when you were playing, you weren't just in Canada, you played for the XFL, right? And so there's different rules, different strategies with that. Was that difficult at times trying to adapt to them?
I would say, yeah. I think the biggest thing was Canada, just because the field's so big.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of get that in your mind. And, as an American, you go up there and they tell you can run at the line of scrimmage. So, those were crazy things when you're trying to do things like that. But, at the end of the day, I feel that one reason I had success is because, my dad told me, when I first didn't get a shot in the NFL and I had to go to Canada, I'm whining about being in Canada. And before I took my drive up there, my old man said, if you aren't planning on being great in every aspect of your life, there's no reason to continue on this path. Like, he's like, you're not changing your skill. You're not a janitor trying to play football. So go up there and work your craft and just be great. And I took that up, and I'm glad I did, because I got on the field the first time, and in Canada, there was no restrictions on players. So I'm competing for 3 slots with 19 guys. And,
wow.
And so thank God I had that mindset leaving, because, at first I was really deterred. But to answer your question, I just, once you get on a football field, even though those small little rules, it's still, as a receiver, it's still about, catching the ball and trying to avoid tackles, and so, once you just decide to really, get into the details of it, and, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like being out in the backyard playing tag,
Yeah, that's great advice. So I love that mindset, and that's what translates to success on the field and off the field, a full life in the game. So that's pretty special. One last question. Because you've played in so many spots, is there one place that you were like, this place is the best? This is the spot for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So living wise, it was Tampa, but as far as the field, as far as the energy, when I was in St. Louis and we had, Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce on the offensive side, and none of those guys had egos bigger than what we were trying to accomplish. Kurt Warner, I think I'd been there probably about 6 months, was playing well, but I was the 5th receiver. Brought me in the office one day and with one other receiver, and just went through his mindset. I mean,
wow.
Chances are, unless those 4 guys, got tired, I wasn't getting on the field. But he felt how important it was to do that. And we fast forward maybe 10 weeks, and we're in the Super Bowl. Al-Zakim tweets a calf. I have to go in on a play I've never run ever. It was a play that actually had Oz's name in it. And we ran it. It was successful. It helped us tie your New England Patriots before they came down and got it. But it was such a testament, and I'll never forget how important it is to make sure you treat everybody the same. You know, because that, by him reaching out and doing that, that helped the team get better by making sure I was on the same page with him. I played one snap in that game and had a key first down. Then he threw the next one to Ricky Prohl. Mine was 3rd and 7. We got 11 yards. He threw a touchdown to Ricky Prohl the next play. So huge. It really solidified who we were as a team. That's how everybody really, you know, conducted business. And it was my favorite place to play, favorite team I was on, you know, throughout my whole career.
It's a pretty good pick.
I mean, it's pretty epic. Yeah. So were you kind of, I know we got to end this, but were you upset when the Rams had to move?
Yeah, you know, I was, because St. Louis is, you know, it's that city. Like, I never walked in that building, and we went in that building for just pep rally stuff. I never walked in that building. There wasn't 70,000 people in there, you know, and they were so excited when you would drive. Nobody even knew who I was, and I was driving a Toyota 4Runner, so I'm sure they didn't think I played. But they would be out there by the exit where the players came out, I mean, for 2.5 hours after the game, screaming, yelling. You could even lose, and they're out there excited.
Yeah,
so
real fan.
I felt bad for them, but, you know, like we were talking about expansion and, you know, the business of the NFL, like, you know, Kroenke and them, they knew they could make a lot of money in L.A., so I think they were trying to do that for a long time.
Yeah. I love the story with Kurt Warner, too. Success is not random, and it's stories like 100%. That tell you everything that you need to know.
But it goes back to what your old man said, right? It's all about being as great as you can be in whatever you're trying to do. You don't know when the moment's going to arrive, but if you prepare for it, you will be ready for that moment, and you were. That's amazing.
That's it. Well, just what you guys said, you know, I think that's the big thing we focus on the athletes with. That last piece is, you know, prepare for that moment, even though you don't even know what the moment is or how it's going to come. But man, if I every day take those steps towards, I'm ready. I'm locked and loaded.
Love it.
Right. Well, we appreciate the moment that you spent with us today. Yo, Murphy, incredible. Hopefully we can stay in touch and talk to you down the road.
That sounds great. I appreciate it, fellas.
Yeah, thank you very much. And remember, you can listen to Storming the Field every Friday during the football season, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Plus, of course, you want to get the latest on the big game forecast. A lot of this is going to adjust. A lot is on the line this time of year. You can go and get that weather news by watching Fox Weather on your favorite TV device, or follow us on social media. Anywhere on social media, I'm at Weatherbender.
And at Ian Oliver WX. I know a lot of fantasy football folks will be staring at some of these forecasts through the weekend. So will we, and you can catch up with us there. We'll see you next time right here on Storming the Field. I'm Fox Weather's Ian Oliver. Are you ready to take your football watching to the next level? We've got the ROE, or risk of weather impact, meticulously crafted for football season. Enough rain can turn a quarterback duel into a mud bowl. Play calling can shift from long bombs to the ground game. Wind changes the calculus of field goal kicking, and players that are used to domes or warm weather, they can freeze up in the cold. It's all considered. The key is that the weather is constantly changing, and timing is everything. It could be the difference between being a fantasy football champ or the laughingstock of your league chat. The ROE gives you an edge in your fantasy league and more. The ROE for football, only on Fox Weather.